Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning. My name is Joe Stars. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Senior Director of Collegiate Programs here at the Fund for American Studies. So on behalf of our Chairman, Randy Teague, our President, Roger Ream, I'd like to welcome you to the closing ceremony of the Summer 2022 programs. Well, congratulations, students, you did it. You went across the finish line. I think we can all agree that this amazing race that you've been on for the last 8 weeks has required a lot of you. Perseverance, dedication, hard work, and stepping outside your comfort zone in many and varied ways. But all of you should be very proud. I know all of us here at Team TFAS are proud of you. You know, we've been hearing great things from your professors, your internship supervisors, your mentors, the TFAS boards, speakers, and other individuals who come in contact with you. We've really got to know and enjoyed getting to know you, the coffees and the different meetings. It's just been a joy. And we want to continue to see you both strive and thrive in your coming career. So hats off to all of you. So this is called a closing ceremony, but we promise you it's not an ending, but just the beginning. So we're proud to welcome you to the ranks of the alumni and TFAS family. We hope that the strength of the connections that you have made this summer will last long after today's ceremony. So you've accomplished a lot in the last 8 weeks, and we're here to celebrate what you accomplished. Collectively, the class of summer of 2022 earned over 1,200 credits here at George Mason University. You interned at over 185 internship sites around the city, and you attended over 160 guest lectures. And I know we have a few internship sponsors and supervisors here, so let's give them a round of applause. In addition to our supervisors, we have a number of people that I would like to thank today. First, I would like to recognize all the parents and family members who have joined us here today and who've traveled to be here, and those who are joining us via the internet. We are broadcasting live today. So thank you for giving your sons and daughters the opportunity to spend a summer away from home and supporting them along the way. Let's give our parents a round of applause. I also want to take this opportunity to thank our benefactors and our donors for providing such generous scholarships for our students. Because of you guys, many of our students were able to attend the program. Your generosity is so appreciated, and we are so grateful for your help. And so let's give a round of applause to our donors and benefactors. I want to thank our executive team at TFAS, Roger Ream, Randy Teague, Steve Slattery, Shane Mazzella, Rob Callahan, Ed Turner, and others. I'd like to thank Mark Funstein from George Mason University, our TFAS liaison here. Thank you, Mark, for your support and for making the summer a successful one. I want to offer a really heartfelt thanks to 3 people, and those are our summer program advisors. For those of you who don't know, our summer program advisors are students who did the program the previous summer. Then we hire them for this summer to help run the program. They live in the dorms with the students. They are just the heart and soul of the summer. And I want to recognize Andy Lopez, Riley Graham, and Elizabeth Ropp for being fantastic leaders this summer. And of course, I don't want to mention everybody by name because there's too many of you, but a special thanks to my colleagues in the collegiate program and also my colleagues here at TFAS. TFAS is more than just collegiate programs. We have a lot of departments: our development department, international affairs, our comms team, finance and administration. So everybody who works for TFAS, please stand up for a second. A quick round of applause. I also want to thank our partners at the Ronald Reagan Institute who help us administer the LTAB program and the Hungry Initiatives Foundation, and our friends at the Braver Angels Debates program. And also, I want to thank our professors. You two are the heart and soul of our program. You two are what makes this program successful. We're happy to have with us today Dr. Ann Bradley, Professor Richard Benedetto, and Dr. Rosalino Candela. Please stand, professors. So we're delighted now to have TFAS VP of Academic Affairs, Dr. Ann Bradley, to say a few words on behalf of our faculty and the Economics Department, which hosts our program within the university. She serves as a year-round faculty member as our George and Sally Meyer Fellow for Economic Education. I'd like to invite Professor Bradley to come forward and speak.
Thank you, Joe. Good morning, everyone. It's exciting. We told you it would go by fast, didn't we? And it did. Well, I have a few, I could say a lot, as you know, if you had me in the classroom, but I will just keep it to a few, I think, important remarks that the faculty and myself want to leave you with. And I'm going to start with Charles Dickens' iconic opening lines to his famous book, A Tale of Two Cities. He writes this: "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair." This passage suggests an age of radical opposites taking place across the English Channel in France and the United Kingdom. It tells a story of contrasts and comparisons between London and Paris during the French Revolution. This phrase points out a major conflict between family and love, hatred and oppression, good and evil, light and darkness, wisdom and folly. Dickens begins this tale with a vision of human prosperity contrasted with human despair. He, in fact, tells us about a class war between the rich and the poor. He tells us of a time of despair and suffering on one hand, and joy and hope on the other. For Dickens, when he writes this, it was published in 1859, when the Industrial Revolution was just getting going. The world's standard of living was about to explode. The hockey stick of economic development was beginning, but no one knew where it would take us. Neither Dickens nor anyone else could have foreseen what would happen. And that takes us to where we are today. Immense prosperity, long lives, high standards of living and literacy, improved healthcare and education and technology that overall reduces our opportunity costs and makes life better. At the same time, population is exploding. And this brings us to the crux of the matter. Human beings are good for the planet, but they require the proper institutions which uphold dignity, agency, property, and exchange. There is only one source of human creativity, and that's us, every one of us on the planet. Liberating the world from poverty means unleashing human creativity, which will generate greater productivity. This is a key insight of economics. There's still much injustice and corruption in the world. It's not a perfect place. It is the best of times, but there's work to be done. We must continue to fight for economic freedom, human freedom, and political freedom. Economics, or what we call here the economic way of thinking, which you learned a lot about this summer, gives us the framework for doing so. It's our pair of glasses by which we can both accurately view the world and apply our theory of human action to our most pressing problems. And it's incumbent on us to do that. This is our job. All of you are future leaders, and we hope that you will use these glasses, the economic way of thinking, to help solve the complex and nuanced problems of the world. We can do this, and you are the future. I want to stop here and tell a story. If you've had even one interaction with me all summer long, you've probably heard some version of this. And it's one of my favorite stories about thinking about the ordinary level of human prosperity that most of us take for granted every day. And this is the story of Boris Yeltsin, the former leader of Russia, who visits the United States in the late 1980s. And he visits the Johnson Space Center, because that's what diplomatic visits look like, right? And he's perusing the Space Center, and he's bored, I guess. And he says, I would like to go to an American grocery store. And so they take him to an American grocery store. And you can Google this story and see amazing pictures of Boris Yeltsin, the leader of Russia, a person with wealth, power, minions. I would like to get minions. I haven't figured that out yet, right? And he is overwhelmed by a very, by the way, 1970s looking grocery store, right? It's got kind of the freezer section and the big bins. It's not the fancy doors with the sensor lights that we have today. And he is both humbled and overwhelmed by his experience in an ordinary American grocery store in the late 1980s. I can't imagine what he would say today. And it really changes his thinking about the way we run economies. In fact, when he's in the middle of the grocery store, he says something that really, I just think, makes me stop in my tracks, which is, if the Russian people knew of this, surely they'd revolt. What that means to me, what that implies about economics, is that the devastation, the immiseration, the inhumanity, the suffering of a century-planned economic system is not the way it has to be. It is a man-made tragedy that immiserates rather than liberates. And so Boris Yeltsin's trip to a grocery store can teach us a lot about economics and about our role in the world. And I think we too should be humbled and overwhelmed by the abundance that we take for granted. How do you feel when you go to the grocery store? Are you like, this is the most amazing thing I'm gonna do today? Look at how free I am, right? Sometimes we're just like checking it off our list. We don't really want to do it. But there are still fellow human beings of ours across the planet that don't get to do that. And they have much more tedious ways to get food if they get it. So there's a lot of work to be done. Let's employ intellectual humility in our pursuit of change. I think when you're at this stage of your life where you are and people tell you you're the future and you're the leaders, those are tough responsibilities. And I also think that they can lead us all to arrogance. Intellectual humility is necessary in our pursuits across the world. In all of what you will do, you must pursue it with curiosity and humility, and use that economic framework to help you understand how to make change. When I was graduating from graduate school, Peter Betke, who's a loved TFAS economist and a mentor to many of us in the room, I remember graduating and he said, okay, you have your PhD in economics. You're now prepared to be a lifelong student. And I thought, well, gosh, I thought I was the expert and I could boss people around now, right? No, you're now prepared to be a lifelong student of economics. And we want you to be lifelong students of the world, students of economics, students of political economy. And we want you to know that none of us can do this alone. So the burden of changing the world is not on your shoulders, which is good news because that's not possible, but we can do it together. And we want you to know as faculty members that we're here for you. We're always a resource, and we love to watch you march enthusiastically into your futures. Thank you for a great summer. We wish you all of our best. Godspeed.
Thank you, Ann. So I'd like now to introduce the summer snapshots, if you will. These are snapshot segments of our ceremony today. We've asked 5 students who have been selected to as representatives of the program track to share some thoughts about their experiences this summer. They're going to speak on one of the themes of living, learning, interning, and connecting, and they'll be introduced by their program staff member. So I'd like to ask Laura Kuzak, director of our public policy program, to come forward and introduce her speaker.
Thank you, Joe. Good morning, everyone. As Joe mentioned, my name is Laura Cusack. I'm the director of the Public Policy and Economics program at TFAS. This program brings together the next generation of courageous leaders who are passionate about politics and aspire to work in legislation, research, law, or public service. These future leaders are introduced to the role of economics in the context of policymaking and learn how to apply the economic way of thinking to a variety of public policy issues. Students in this program intern in policy groups, congressional offices, federal agencies, think tanks, and NGOs. This summer, we've engaged with a number of speakers from organizations such as Free the Facts, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, the Mercator Center, congressional offices, and federal agencies, and so many more. Over the past 8 weeks, our students worked hard, were engaged in all the facets of the program, took as many opportunities as possible. They've been positive, open-minded, and a very impressive group of students to work with. So I'd like to take this moment and just say that this is actually one of the most impressive groups of students that I've seen over the past several years. So I'd like to invite the 79 students who are in the Public Policy and Economics program to please stand and be recognized. Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce our student speaker, Benny Sabo, from the Budapest Business School, representing the Public Policy and Economics track. Benny brings a unique perspective to our program as a Hungarian student majoring in international economics. This summer is his first time living in the US Capitol, and he is here to share with us more about his experience. Let's give a warm welcome to Benny.
If my English will be bad, I apologize already. So I have the honor of delivering the closing remarks as the second Hungarian student for the Public Policy and Economics track, so I try to live with this opportunity. And if there is one message you take home today, let it be this: live up to your potential. I'm Bence Sabo, and I'm coming from a small Hungarian town called Gyöngyös. If you translate it into English, it would be like somewhat along the lines of pearly, something of value. So this is a town that has always been valuable to me, and I want to go back to my town and bring all the experiences I gathered here to home and utilize every knowledge as possible. But the thing is, you all live in villages, towns, and cities. We all share a responsibility in representing our communities. To tell you a story, last weekend I met with a veteran of Afghanistan who tries to run a campaign for the county board of Arlington, Virginia. And with only a handful of volunteers, they try to challenge the local status quo. And if there's one thing I learned in America this summer, it is that we as individuals have an intrinsic responsibility to help not only ourselves, but our communities as well. Throughout the TFAS program lectures this summer, we got to learn about the challenges the US society is facing. This program, however, prepared us for the challenges of the future and how to become effective leaders. Living in DC for 8 weeks taught me important lessons of how to connect with people, how to network with people. But if there's one piece of recommendation, please don't trigger the fire alarms for like 5 or 6 times in the district house. There are many people who want to sleep. Please, come on. Oh, that worked, that's good. It's good. But on a serious note, we have started creating communities of problem solvers. And I think that is the essence of our track. Our job here this summer was to realize that we have to bridge the gap between academic theories and ideas and the real, actual problems our societies face, and we have to find a common solution. An idea is worth nothing if it stays in the academia. You have to apply it to the people in the right environment, in the right way. TFAS taught me how to find partners on a journey. and we must live with our opportunities because we may not get any more. If we are to be the future leaders, the leaders of the future, we must live up to our potential, assume responsibility, and give something back to our communities. If my hometown finds me worthy to serve them as mayor in the future, I can honestly say that I owe an incredible thanks to Washington and the US. So without further ado, let's go TFAS, let's go America. God bless this country. Thank you so much.
I don't know how I can follow that. Good morning, everyone. My name is Colin Parks, and I direct our International Affairs program track here at TFAS. Our track is designed to develop courageous leaders in foreign policy in international relations in the various subfields, whether that be national security or aid and development or international law, what have you. We do this, of course, in numerous ways. And this summer, our students, 74 total, had the opportunity to discuss some key salient issues in foreign policy, including U.S.-Iranian relations, U.S. grand strategy toward China, the rise of authoritarianism, Russia's war on the Ukraine. We had a debate on restraint versus primacy in U.S. foreign policy. And we heard from scholars from such notable institutions as the Atlantic Council, the Wilson Center, the Mercatus Center, Cato, and the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. We had over 20 small group career panels this summer, and students heard from representatives from the intelligence community, whether that be the FBI or the Defense Intelligence Agency or the CIA. We heard from others from the Department of State, Department of Treasury, the U.S. Institute of Peace, various consulting or contracting firms in the defense space, others in the aid and development space, human rights, and so on. We had a debate through our partner, the Braver Angels, on the efficacy of international organizations in keeping peace. And we also had a diplomatic simulation where our students had the opportunity to break into country teams to try to simulate a negotiated settlement to Russia's war on Ukraine. We also had various site briefings at the State Department, the World Bank, the International Trade Administration, and the U.S. Institute of Peace. And our students interned all across the city at various think tanks, NGOs, nonprofits, government agencies, consulting firms, and the like. So it was quite a busy summer, but I hope for all of them, it gave them some insight into the vast opportunities that exist within our field. I'd now like to introduce our student speaker, and that would be Laurel Holly. Where is Laurel? Hi, Laurel. Yes. So Laurel is a rising sophomore at Duke University, where she is pursuing a bachelor's degree in public policy in Asian and Middle Eastern studies with a minor in global health. Though she only has completed her first year of college, she has been quite active and has really built up quite a resume of experience already. She is a council member with the Duke program in American Grand Strategy, a research assistant for the transnational information systems of the Asian diaspora. She was a policy lab associate for the Duke Center for Politics and a student advisor for the Duke UNICEF Innovation Accelerator. She grew up internationally, both in Mexico and France, which I learned, not surprisingly earlier this week, was very much an impetus for her interest in the field, particularly a visit to Normandy, France, where she saw the memorial to D-Day. So Laurel spent this summer interning at the National Bureau of Asian Research, and she was also our lead debater in the Braver Angels debate. So Laurel has been most active this summer and really a fine representative of our program. So Laura, please come forward.
Well, thank you, Colin, for those kind words. Thank you, Emily, Riley, and Colin, for an amazing summer experience. Thank you, Mom, Dad, and my brother Zane for supporting me in my political journey. I know you're watching. So, getting into it, what an honor it has been to learn in the nation's capital. At TFAS, we've been provided with opportunities to learn inside and outside of the classroom, in theory and in practice. And I would like to share some of my learnings with you in hopes that you've had some of the same and more. So my first learning from Economies in Transition with Professor Candela is the importance of economic freedom and stability. In our case studies of the Soviet Union and the People's Republic of China, we found that what people need in order to live, what societies need in order to thrive, is the ability to choose what to buy and sell, the certainty of where your money will come from and what it's worth, and the knowledge that you can take care of yourself and your loved ones. Economic stability provides that. My second learning from public policy with Professor Sarnecki is the immeasurable value of teamwork. My teammates and I constructed a presentation for a Solar Trade Association's legislative strategy with the upcoming Congress, and with the incredible technical knowledge brought by my teammates, their incredible graphic design skills, and the enthusiasm that they brought, our project wouldn't have been the success that it was. In teams, a recognition of the value that each person brings and a willingness to be your best for your team are crucial. And I'm beyond grateful for my teammates in this experience. My third learning from the United States Institute of Peace briefing, but also from my lovely sweet mates and friends, is the necessity of seeing one another as human. At the Institute, we saw the consequences of what happens from ostracizing and otherizing a group of people for being different. Violence, war, the shattering of entire societies. We have a responsibility to view one another as people. People who are equals, people who deserve to be loved, and people who deserve to be heard. And that's true regardless of ideology, partisan affiliation, race, gender, religion, and more. It's our responsibility as the next generation of leaders, political or otherwise, to carry forth this message of acceptance, to work for an America and a world where everyone is valued. I feel better about the prospect of this future because I've met all of you over the past 8 weeks. And thank you, TFAS, for this transformative summer. And thank you all for being a part of my learning.
Good morning. My name is Abby McGovern, and I'm the coordinator for the Leadership and the American Presidency Program. This is our program track that is run in conjunction with the Ronald Reagan Presidential Institute and Foundation. And in this program, students spend the summer learning about the American presidency and presidential leadership and have the opportunity to visit sites such as Mount Vernon, Monticello, and Lincoln's Cottage. They've also heard from individuals with impressive leadership experience, including members of Congress, former cabinet secretaries, and White House fellows. The students in this program have interned at a variety of sites around the city that focus on leadership in a wide range of sectors, including nonprofits, policy organizations, and positions on the Hill. And before I introduce our student speaker, I would like to invite all 60 Leadership in the American Presidency students to stand up and be recognized. Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce Isaac Lopez, our student speaker today. Isaac is a rising junior at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo who is majoring in agricultural science. During his time here in DC, Isaac interned at a nonprofit called Voto Latino, and he is here to tell us a little bit more about his experience interning in DC. So please welcome Isaac.
Thanks so much, Abby. So hello, everyone. My name is Isaac Lopez. I am a rising junior at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and I just am really excited to share about my experience at my internship. So as we conclude our time here at TFAS and at our summer internships, I'm immensely grateful for this experience that strengthens skills, expanded my network, and shaped new friendships. When I first applied to the Leadership and American Presidency track, my main goal was to learn more about civic engagement and how I could mobilize others in my community. Both the LTAP track and my internship allowed me to accomplish this goal. I was hired on as the events lead and partnerships fellow at Voto Latino, and throughout the past 8 weeks, I have gained a vast amount of administrative skills as I helped plan our annual Power Summit, a 2-day conference aimed to empower Latinx students across the nation. I was tasked with setting up and sitting in on meetings with sponsors and talent and organized panel partnerships with several coalitions across the country. During early July, I participated in a 3-day retreat with the staff members. I was able to learn more about the different departments in our nonprofit, including the Latino Anti-Disinformation Lab, marketing, and social media sectors. We reviewed the effectiveness of persuasion ads and previewed the commercials that we would be airing in targeted states ahead of the midterm elections. I also was fortunate enough to meet our CEO and president, Maria Teresa Kumar. In addition to leading our organization, MT is a news anchor for MSNBC. So we had weekly opportunities to pitch news segments and then see them broadcasted later that week. We connected over our California roots, and she made a true effort to understand what drove the fellows to the organization. MT and the whole Voto Latino team has provided me with a deeper connection towards the role that we play in our democracy. From the swift response to the Uvalde shootings, to their work to tackle misinformation, my internship has shown me the impact that civically engaged leaders can have. I have every confidence that my LTAP peers and that every student in this room will take their own intern experiences and be these leaders as we return to our communities. Thank you so much.
Great looking guy up there, isn't he? So I also oversee our journalism and communications program. So let me talk a little bit about that before I introduce our speaker. In our journalism and communications program, we try to offer concrete examples of what it takes to be a good journalist and a good communications professional. This takes place first and foremost at their internships, of course. And this summer, the students of our Summer 22 program got the chance to cover breaking news and history-making events across multiple media platforms. Students interested in our public relations had a chance to work for interesting clients, write PR pitches, and collaborate with some of the best PR pros that DC has to offer. In our guest lecture series, they heard from a documentary film producer, a senior White House reporter, a senior communications pro from a science nonprofit, and ended with an award-winning journalist who is a commentary editor for a local newspaper. In our career industry visits, we met with a Time Magazine reporter, a Fox News producer, a producer at C-SPAN, a financial reporter, and a commentary editor at the Washington Examiner. All of these, by the way, except the latter, were TFAS alumni. We also had a chance to go to the Watergate on the 50th anniversary of the break-in and learn more about it. Each student was assigned a character from the Watergate episode, and we had a great time. And they also had a chance to tour the National Press Club as well. So it was a great summer for our students. I'm proud of all of you, so please stand to be recognized. So here now to talk about her internship experience this summer is Esther Wickham. She's a rising senior at the King's College in New York City. This summer, she interned at the Washington Examiner newspaper. Back at school, she was the campus editor for the Empire State Tribune. She completed her spring internship at the New York Daily News, and she calls the state of California home. Let's welcome Esther.
Good morning. All right, ever since I've moved to DC, I've approximately taken 467,748 steps. I have enjoyed a specific route that I walk to for my internship. I know the turns, the restaurants, and the people that commute daily. It's become familiar and comfortable to me. Interning at the Washington Examiner in the opinion section has been nothing less than eventful. At first, I was skeptical as to why they would let a college intern write op-eds, but I soon realized how essential it was in shaping my own worldview and writing skills. I had free range to write over 40 different articles, ranging from politics, economics, culture, and policy, creating clever headlines like "Dear Gen Z, stop complaining," and "Living in your mother's basement should not be the end goal," and being called a boomer on Twitter. My internship summer in DC with TFAS has taught me that no matter my age, experience, or being considered the intern, can still accomplish my goals if I set before myself, if I simply go for it. With that came some amazing opportunities and, naturally, disadvantages. Some highlights from my internship were having one of my articles featured on Fox News and one on Business Insider. Like any good child, I immediately texted my mom. I also had the privilege to attend a White House press briefing and saw firsthand the relationship between the news and government. It was quite exciting. But most of all, I enjoyed receiving emails from fans that had read my articles and really wanted to share their opinions about my opinions. I was ecstatic to get hate mail because it meant that people were actually reading what I wrote and cared enough to send me a DM on Facebook or an email. We all have stories to share of our success this summer, and I'm immensely grateful for the opportunities that God has given me. As I continue to take many more steps in my career journey, it will at times be unfamiliar and uncomfortable, but I am confident that being a part of TFAS will continue to shape that path. So congrats, guys. We've made it to the Facebook group. Thank you.
Hi guys, my name is Lainey Carlton and I am the Director of the Business and Government Relations Program here at TFAS. In the Business and Government Relations Program, I say it's a really unique one that we offer because our students delve into the complexities of the relationship between businesses and all of the legislation and the regulations that affect them on a daily basis. Our students intern with a variety of opportunities ranging from government relations teams at companies large and small, to trade associations, to lobbying firms. In our guest lectures this summer, our students heard from a lot of awesome speakers on a wide range of topics. Some of these included Lauren Beliv, who's a TFAS alum. She is the Director of Government Relations at SoftBank Corp, and she discussed her career path in the government relations space. They heard from representatives from Semiconductor Industry Association as well as Samsung Semiconductor about the importance of their sector right now, which I think we all have learned or kind of know what semiconductors are now, and the challenges that they're facing. And beyond the lecture, our students engaged in a debate on climate change and how those policies should be addressed, whether at the state or the federal level. And they explored a number of different career paths, including government relations at Albertsons Companies, which is a grocery store chain. And they also learned from government relations at American Short Line and Regional Railroad Association. Try and say that 5 times fast. They learned about jobs in consulting at Deloitte, at Stateside Associates, at Alpine Group. They learned about public affairs at pharma, regulatory jobs at the SEC. They learned about careers on Capitol Hill and what it's like to be a partner at Covington and Burling, which is a big law firm here in DC. So before I introduce our program speaker, I want to ask the 45 business and government relations students to please stand and be recognized. Thanks, guys. Y'all have been a joy to work with. You have been such a strong group of students, and I am proud to call you my program. So now I would like to introduce Tabitha Akoto. Tabitha is a rising junior at Purdue University, and she is studying political science. During the academic year, she's involved with College Mentors for Kids and Chi Alpha. While here in DC, Tabitha interned at the Industrial Minerals Association, and she took advantage of many, if not maybe all, of the professional development sessions and opportunities that we offered. And she really took it upon herself to make meaningful relationships while here in DC. So I'd like to ask Tabitha to come up and close out our student snapshots.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Lainey Carlton, my amazing program advisor, for allowing me to speak today on the Connects tagline. Now, I think by now we have all heard the words connecting or networking more than we want to. Nonetheless, I want to tell you about what that means to me and why connecting has been far from a superficial, transactional experience. This program has allowed me to pursue meaningful relationships. Unbeknownst to me, that pursuit started back in February 2022 when I started establishing relationships with alumni from Purdue. Upon my arrival, I had the pleasure of reconnecting with Sutton Roach, a graduate of Purdue class of 2016 who now works for the FBI. After all this time, I asked myself, why would someone put a halt to their busy schedule to find time to see a student like me? However, I eventually learned that it was not because I had the perfect stats or resume that moved Sutton to support me. It was because when we first met, we established a sincere admiration for one another. Some of my most invaluable moments during my internship have been the conversations and lunches with my supervisors, where we did not talk about anything work-related, but simply shared our travel experiences and truly got to know one another. Even more, my amazing mentor, Kaylee Seville, who before ever really knowing me, invited me to her church, so that I find community with people who I share the same values with. I share these meaningful experiences to showcase that people typically want to be known for who they are rather than what they do. Now, I am not negating the importance of connecting with people who have career paths we aspire to be on one day, although I encourage you to not allow that to be your primary focus. That's because when we pursue relationships with people solely because of their prestigious position, it creates space for inauthentic relationships. As we leave here this weekend, our professional titles will change, but who we are remains. Therefore, as we strive to maintain relationships with professionals and friends we met in the program, please take the time to truly get to know people for who they are rather than solely what they do. Thank you.
Wow, that was tremendous. Thank you, all of you, for those remarks. Well, some of what I want to say before I make an introduction of our keynote speaker is echoing things that Joe Stars and Professor Bradley said earlier. I picked up on the fact that those 8 short weeks ago when you arrived, Joe Stars used the metaphor of this being the Super Bowl, and today he used the track analogies of crossing the finish line and running the race. So I will probably pick up on some of what he said and what I say this morning. You have come to the end of your TFAS summer. I don't like to consider this day an ending, but like Joe said, it's a beginning. Not a closing ceremony, but more of an opening ceremony. We are opening a set of figurative doors and sending out 275 young people on a journey of courageous leadership. Godspeed to you all. The poet Robert Frost famously wrote a poem, "A Road Less Traveled." Hopefully, most of you know the poem. The final stanza is as follows. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. This summer, each one of you took a road less traveled by. You chose to come to TFAS, come to the nation's capital to live, learn, and intern. Few, if any, of your classmates took this road. Now it is up to each one of you to ensure that it makes all the difference. A tagline at TFAS for certain purposes has been making the difference. We hope very much that this summer has made the difference for each of you.
that your experience has been clarifying, enriching, transformative. In his book, Science and Humane Values, Jacob Brunowski recounts the story of the Sherpa who live in Nepal and assist climbers on that arduous journey up to the summit of Mount Everest. The Sherpa have lived in a valley around Everest for generations, so they're very well acclimated to the altitude and the challenging conditions. Brunowski shares a story from Eric Shipton's ascent of Everest in 1953 with his Sherpa, Antarke. During this particular climb, Antarke saw Everest from the south for the first time, having lived his life for years on the north side of the mountain. Quote, Antarke, who knew the features of Everest as well as I did from the other side and had spent many years in his boyhood grazing yaks in the valley there, had never recognized them as the same, nor did he do so now when I pointed them out to him. The features appeared to be new. In other words, when taken to see Everest from the south, this Sherpa, who was so familiar with the mountain's features from the north, failed to recognize it as the same peak. That single mountain, Everest, revealed diverse characteristics when viewed from different valleys, from different perspectives. I hope you grasp this important point, which is the value of seeing, hearing, and understanding different perspectives, of looking at problems and considering solutions that might require you to change your thinking, to change your perspective. I like to call it entrepreneurial thinking. We talk a great deal about liberty and leadership at TFAS. Those are key words in our mission statement. We embrace the idea, as James Madison expressed it, that the advance and diffusion of knowledge is the only guardian of true liberty. I hope you leave Washington, D.C. with new knowledge. I hope TFAS contributed to your understanding of how the world works and better prepared you to make the difference. You will inherit a world very different from the one that my generation was born into more than half a century ago. In many ways, it is better. Professor Bradley recounted that. Our world is wealthier, healthier, cleaner. We're much better educated. We live longer lives and have more leisure time. Life is much more improved for women and minorities, but significant challenges remain for your generation. Tyranny threatens liberty and democracy in all corners of the world. We have not abolished war, and I'm afraid we never will. There are human beings in bondage in many parts of the world. The thirst for power and control and the desire to impose utopian dreams on people will forever be a challenge requiring eternal vigilance. Today, as we send you from here, my colleagues and I have great confidence that each of you will make a difference for the better. That is why I conclude, give us wide walls to build our house of life. May the North be filled with love against the winds of fate, the South of tolerance that we may outreach hate, the East of faith that rises bright and clear each day, the West of hope that even dies a brilliant way. The floor beneath our feet should be humility, the roof, the sky itself, infinity. Give us wide walls to build our house of life. Thank you. It's now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Peter Feldman. Peter is a great friend of TFAS. He attended our summer program on philanthropy and voluntary service while a college student at Colgate. That program is not one we've run this summer, but it's one we ran for many years with an emphasis on the importance of being engaged in your community, echoing many of the themes we heard this morning from Benny and others. Peter also was a public policy fellow and attended our law seminar program. He's been an active volunteer with the organization for many years, and this summer hosted an intern from our Law Fellows program. So he's a dear friend of ours. Peter is a commissioner on the U.S. Product Safety Commission. He was nominated to that position and began serving as a commissioner in October of 2018. He was renominated and confirmed for a full 7-year term just a few years ago. Prior to joining the commission, Peter Feldman served as senior counsel to the United States Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation. In that capacity, he was a key advisor on quite a few important pieces of legislation and worked on privacy issues with Senator John Thune of South Dakota, chairman of the committee. Peter has a very varied background through his work in the Senate on a number of very important issues. Since his full biography is in the program, I won't go into all those issues. But he's served as a staffer for Senator Mike DeWine of Ohio. He's a graduate of law school at American University and is a member of the Maryland Bar. We're really grateful to Peter for taking time out of his very busy schedule and his important work in government to be with us this morning and share some words of wisdom with us. So please join me in giving Peter Feldman a warm welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger, for that kind introduction. I was honored when TFAS asked me to deliver commencement remarks to the undergraduate summer programs. The Fund for American Studies has been such an important part of my life and career, and I'd like to speak to you today a little bit about what this organization has meant to me. I'd also like to speak a little bit about the transition that you've now spent the several past months this summer learning from all of your various studies into something tangible, some takeaways that hopefully will serve you as you embark on your future careers in leadership. Through the fund, I've developed some lifelong friendships, including my dear friend Joe Lai, who was mentioned recently on Roger Ream's podcast, which I would encourage you all to listen to if you get a second. So I thought I'd find it fitting to return the favor by mentioning him briefly today. But my biggest pleasure has been the opportunity that TFAS has offered me to mentor students through the official mentorship program and through the various TFAS interns that I've brought on over the years. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Devin Humphreys, who's here today, who recently completed the TFAS Legal Studies program and who served this summer as a summer associate in my office at CPSC. He's now heading back to Notre Dame to complete his 3L year, but as I informed him on the phone yesterday, you never really leave TFAS and you never really leave Team Feldman. So Devin, if you thought you were getting away cleanly, you're mistaken. It's useful to think back to TFAS's founding in its early years to get a sense of what this organization is all about and why it still matters, perhaps now more than ever. Back then, a number of concerned citizens, including Governor Edison of New Jersey and William F. Buckley and David R. Jones and Walter Judd, came together under the common belief that higher education in the United States had de-emphasized, or in certain cases had outright transitioned away from a fair and balanced presentation of our founding documents. And the concern that they shared was that without this curriculum, not just the history of our founding and the freedoms in the United States, but their practical applications to the debates of the day, that American colleges and universities were doing a disservice to future leaders in the country and American civil society in general. And to be clear, the debates of those days were consequential, from the ongoing Cold War to the struggle for dominance between two diametrically opposed economic systems between East and West, to Vietnam and civil rights and the tensions that existed at home over the very nature of freedom in America. So TFAS, or as it was known back then, the Charles Edison Youth Fund, came to be under the general premise that by teaching future leaders about freedom in the West, we would leave students better prepared to be critical thinkers, citizens, and global actors with the skills to make meaningful contributions to the debates of the day, and ultimately to leave this place a better place than we found it. So I first became involved with the Fund for American Studies as a recent college graduate. It was the summer of 2004, and I had heard about a program that sounded interesting. It was TFAS's Institute on Philanthropy and Voluntary Service. This was the first summer that this program had been offered in Washington and had been previously held at Indiana University Bloomington. But when it relocated to DC that summer, it was with a great deal of excitement that it was coming under the TFAS banner. And at that time, the courses were held at Georgetown University's campus, and we were all co-located with the other TFAS summer programs. And what was exciting about IPVS was the emphasis that program put on truly understanding American civil society and the role that voluntary organizations make and play in making America work. It was Alexis de Tocqueville, who was perhaps not the first to notice this, but is the person who history is now crediting with his observations about American civil society being something unique and special. And in other countries at the time, or at least in 18th century France and England, these weren't always prioritized. In fact, too often, the dominant European powers of the time saw free association as something threatening. And it's important to unpack why that was and why our founding fathers sought ultimately to protect what became that right codified and enshrined in the First Amendment. So de Tocqueville, through his travels through the early United States, was struck by how ingrained free association and civil society was in America at that time. And it's something that really didn't exist elsewhere. And perhaps that had something to do with American geography. The American landscape was changing. Cities weren't fully established, and we were ever increasing westward and expanding the frontier in that direction. So in those early days, the settlements in rural America, vibrant civil society was often a necessary survival tool. We like to talk about rugged American individualism, but the truth is we've always been interdependent on each other to varying degrees, and that's important to make America what it is, and voluntary association to a large degree makes that possible. So what became clear to me that summer was how relevant these insights were to the discussions of that day. The Bush tax cuts in the summer of 2004 was one of the most ambitious public policy reforms to our revenue system, and the efforts that Congress was making at the time to make those changes permanent. So this debate, as you might imagine, centered around the potential benefits to economic growth that the tax cuts would stimulate, and the countervailing reductions in government services that the country might face if the tax cuts resulted in lower federal revenues. And what seemed missing from that debate was civil society, the millions of organizations across the country, including religious groups, 501c3 organizations, charities, and others who were ready and willing to step in to fill the void. In fact, to say that they were ready to step in to fill the void really isn't fair, because they'd been there all along. The founding fathers saw to that when they enshrined the First Amendment. But in any event, the inherent advantages of this system were apparent to de Tocqueville, that local organizations are inherently more efficient because they're closer to need, and they're able to deliver services without the stigma associated sometimes with government assistance. In other words, these organizations function as a better alternative, not only in terms of cost, but also human dignity. And that's something that's struck me as particularly insightful during IPVS, and it's something that has stuck with me ever since. And as Roger mentioned, I began my career on Capitol Hill and in law, and now in higher level government service. That has been particularly fulfilling. I've had opportunities to help shape the debates of the day as a congressional staffer for Senator and now Governor Mike DeWine, and later as a senior counsel to the Senate Commerce Committee. And in that role, I got to conduct investigations of all the various entities under our purview, including private sector firms and the various federal agencies that were under my legislative portfolio, including the Federal Trade Commission and the Consumer Product Safety Commission, where I now currently serve. And generally, these organizations work well, but there are always areas that need improvement and redirection, and that in many ways is the purpose of government. And there have been scandals along the way where we uncovered government mismanagement and sought accountability. And government organizations are run by humans and therefore susceptible to human failings. And what was clear to me through my work on the Hill was that so too are non-governmental voluntary organizations, the same things that Alexis de Tocqueville took a look at. One of my responsibilities on the Senate Commerce Committee was having some role over our sports jurisdiction, which is quite broad. I always wanted to be a sports lawyer. Historically, the Commerce Committee has used this jurisdiction to examine issues in sports, going back to the 1919 World Series fixing scandal to more recently taking a look at everything from the brain health of NFL players to performance-enhancing drugs to the Olympics. And when I was in charge, I recall attending an event one evening on a beautiful rooftop overlooking the Capitol. It was sponsored by the United States Olympic Committee, and we were celebrating Team USA's victories at I can't remember which Olympic Games, but I ran into a five-time Olympic gold medalist and gymnast, Nadia Comaneci, at the event. We began talking about the work that I was doing for the committee, and she casually asked if I'd heard anything about the rumors of sexual abuse in USA Gymnastics and the problems that were occurring at a number of the training facilities. And I hadn't, and she encouraged me to go back and take a closer look. Of course, we did take a closer look and uncovered one of the most disturbing institutional failures that I've ever seen, with systemic abuse, sexual and otherwise, of young athletes at training camps and by team doctors, and all occurring under the eyes of USA Gymnastics. And the happy part of this story is that through the efforts of the Commerce Committee and through the testimony of so many of the brave survivors who came forward to speak on the record about their experiences, we were able to shine a bright light on what was occurring and put in place meaningful reforms to prevent this sort of thing from ever happening again. So Congress enacted and President Trump ultimately signed into law the Protecting Young Victims from Sexual Abuse Act of 2018 that included some important whistleblower protections and criminal penalties to ensure openness and transparency. And I'm pleased that to this day, these authorities are still being used to keep our athletes safe. But to tie it back to de Tocqueville, this is an important example of private organizations in America failing, as well as in government and civil society. But the good news is that our system is resilient, and that we should be that should be something that resonates as encouraging to everybody. So this interplay continues, and one of the things that I've noticed in my work at the Consumer Product Safety Commission is that the emphasis that the congressional authors of our statute placed when they were drafting the Consumer Product Safety Act on how voluntary organizations, the role that the voluntary organizations play in how we administer public health and safety policy in the United States. So all regulatory agencies, to some degree or another, rely on the input of private groups in the promulgation of the rules that we enforce. So the Administrative Procedure Act, for example, has as one of its central features the concept of notice and comment rulemaking, whereby an agency proposes a rule, notifies the public about what it intends to do, and then is required to sit and review all the comments that it receives from interested parties about what works, what doesn't, how an agency might seek potential changes before final passage of a rule. But at CPSC, we take things a little bit further when it comes to the safety standards we enforce. And these safety standards run the gamut from requirements about labeling to performance standards for household appliances to prohibitions on lead and small parts that present choking hazards and toys and articles intended for children under 3, for example. So we're authorized to promulgate safety standards, but are required to defer to existing voluntary standards unless we find that the standards aren't sufficiently robust or that there isn't substantial compliance with a particular voluntary standard in the marketplace. So the voluntary standards development process is fascinating. It's an open process where technical experts and safety advocates, private industry, and consumers all come together to meet in various committees and subcommittees to solve safety issues via consensus. The process can be a little unwieldy and often takes longer than we'd like it to, but ultimately what we're left with here are thoughtful standards that are technically feasible and implementable. And most importantly, through that voluntary consensus, we end up with standards that enjoy buy-in from all these different stakeholders. And most importantly, there's a certain durability that goes along with that because they're less likely to receive challenges on grounds that they're impermissible or arbitrary and capricious because it's enjoyed that buy-in. So as good as this system works, I think back to my experience overseeing USA Gymnastics, that all institutions, public and private, are subject to failure. We're humans and oversee all of these things. So occasionally, even the voluntary consensus process gets it wrong. And in those instances, CPSC has additional authorities that it's able to call on, but we're always on the lookout for abuse, even in voluntary organizations. For instance, we want to make sure that the process is truly open, that it's not dominated in these forums by large incumbents that are seeking to exclude new market entrants or stifle innovation or engage in rent-seeking behavior, for example. So again, human institutions are all subject to human failures, but the process is resilient. The system, for the most part, works. And I think de Tocqueville, if he were watching now, would be proud. So as you guys conclude your studies at TFAS and your internships this summer, I'm reminded of a speech that Senator Bob Bennett gave upon his retirement from the United States Senate. It was one of the better speeches that I've ever seen on the floor of the Senate, and I would encourage all of you, when you have a moment this afternoon or before you head back to school, to watch it. So Senator Bennett explained that one of the most important things that he learned in his time in Washington was that it is an extraordinary place filled with extraordinary people. And the caricature that we often get from the press and the movies is that people from other places often think that Washington is filled with folks with self-serving agendas and have very low standards of ethics. But in my experience, this simply is not true. Washington is filled with people of the highest standards of ethics, and we have a few clunkers, that's for sure. But overall, the folks with the high standard of ethics and dedication that the American people could ever want. I hope this has been your experience as well. Washington is an extraordinary place filled with extraordinary people who take their jobs very seriously and deserve the kind of respect and recognition that too often they do not get. And everybody says that when they leave this place, the thing that they're going to miss most is the people. I certainly felt that at the end of my summer with TFAS. The friendships that I made here, the lessons that I was taught, and the mentors that I've had along the way have all been an important part of it. But I'm happy to have had the opportunity to continue my involvement with this extraordinary organization. As a mentor, as a public policy fellow, and later as an alumni board member, it's been a pleasure to give back and to look forward. So I wish you all, again, the best of luck and my sincere congratulations on completing your work this summer. It's my honor to welcome you all, or to be among the first to welcome you all to the TFAS Alumni Network. Thank you all very much and enjoy the rest of the summer.
Thank you, Peter. That was great. We forgot to recognize a group of very impressive students. They've done a lot this summer, and we wanted to make sure that they got recognition. So will the 74 students from our International Affairs program please stand? Very good. Impressive group. So next in our program, we have a tradition that includes recognizing students who did well in their classes, who excelled in the learn part of our program here at George Mason University. So we asked each professor to nominate a student or students who did particularly well. So I'd like to ask the faculty who are here present to come up behind the table and help us to administer the awards. So I'll call each student by name, and if you could come receive your certificate and then return to your seat. So the awardee for our class, Economics and the Citizen, taught by Professor Boudreau, goes to Katie King from Austin College, and she's a student in our Business and Government Affairs program. Katie. And thank you, the George Vixens Award for economic problems and public policy, taught by Professor Bradley, goes to Carolina Lund from the University of Dubuque. And the recipient of the George Vixens Award for Economic Problems in Public Policy, taught by Professor Coyne, goes to Dominic Kesey from Mercer University. Dominic. So we have two awardees for the next class. This is the George Vixens Award for Economics in Transition, taught by Professor Candela, and it goes to Gabriela Perez and Arnaud Van Brie. Gabriela is from Vanderbilt, and Arnaud is from Delft University of Technology. Our next award is for our U.S. Foreign Policy class, taught by Professor Asconis. We have two awardees. We have Mackenzie Hansen from UNC Chapel Hill and Kristen Heinzig from the University of Washington. For our American Political Thought class, taught by Professor Boyd, goes to two students, Jack Nicastro from Dartmouth University and Maggie Munsterman from Truman State University. And the award for our Politics and Press Internship Seminar, taught by the great Professor Benedetto, goes to Brandon Quiros from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. And the award for our Public Policy International Affairs Internship Seminar, taught by Professor Zarnicki, goes to Carter Moxley from the University of Texas, Austin. And this last award, the student actually received it last night at a separate ceremony, and he is with the Leadership in the American Presidency Program. That's the program that we run in cooperation with the Ronald Reagan Institute. But we wanted to recognize this student and have him stand. And the award for that class goes to Blake Johnson from Ohio Wesleyan University. Could you please stand, Blake? Okay. All right, thank you, faculty, for joining us. You can sit down now. Apologies for any names that I butchered or will butcher. So next on the program, we like to offer our Outstanding Student Awards. A lot of you were very outstanding, but these awards go to a student or students who really jump in with both feet, who just take a big bite out of the apple and just delve into every aspect of the program. And we found all these students to be exceptional. So again, please come forward. And at the end of the ceremony, all you award winners, please come to the stage for a picture with the our great photographer, Dave Scavone. So we will start with the outstanding students for our public policy and economics programs. Goes to Kelly Panlaqui from the University of California, San Diego. As well as Brockton Yoder from Purdue University. In the International Affairs outstanding students goes to Calvin Height from William Jewell College. As well as Maggie Matthews from Syracuse University. I'm a little biased on this next one. For our journalism and communications program, the Outstanding Student Award goes to Chris Babona from Orange Coast College in California. The winner of the Outstanding Student Award in our Business and Government Relations program goes to Caleb Swanson from the University of South Dakota. Caleb. And finally, the Outstanding Student Award for their leadership in the American Presidency programs goes to Vanessa Chavez Wardo from the University of Nebraska. Well, congratulations, students, and don't forget to come forward at the end of the ceremony to have a picture up here. And I'd like to ask our chairman, Randy Teague, to say a few parting words. Thank you.
That's me a few weeks ago. You know, on this platform, at this podium, at this microphone, 8 weeks ago, I said to you this was going to be the fastest 8 weeks of your life. And here you are at the end of the fastest 8 weeks of your life. But, you know, looking forward, somewhere around the end of September, another 8 weeks will have passed. And after that, many, many more 8 weeks. And what that tells us looking forward is that all of life is compressed into different chronological measurements. Freshman year, sophomore year, young adulthood, careers, jobs, etc. But when they are all added up, some of them will stand out to be more important in your life, both factually and emotionally. As you build your own families, as you work in your own communities, as you work in your own jobs, all of that will come together. You know, at the beginning of this 8 weeks, we tried here at this podium to inspire you. And we come now at the end of this 8 weeks with that flipped, because we are so inspired ourselves by you. The awards that were given today, the remarks that have been given, the hundreds upon hundreds of private conversations which we have had, all persuade us and convince us of your futures and the necessity of your futures in the very complex world in which we find ourselves today. The paradigms that are out there, the conflict of narratives, and you have to find your place in those, and you will find your place in those. We have been around for a long time. 1967 was when this organization was founded. 1970 was when the first institutes were launched. We hope to be around a lot longer, and that will be solidified, strengthened, and encouraged for the benefit of other students by your participation in the future life of this organization. We want to be an open door for you. It's something as simple as making sure that this brochure never leaves its presence in your life. You're going to remember names, thoughts, ideas, universities. Use this as a reference tool. Build that reference tool, obviously, in your digital world. But always be available and interested in this organization. In the most immediate sense, I remind you, as you have been reminded several times in the last 8 weeks, your program does not, your experience in this program does not have to end today or this week. If you go to law, we have a law program. If you're interested in overseas, we have 2 programs in Prague, 1 in Latin America, and we hope within the next year or 2 to be able to restart our program, which for many years was in Hong Kong, and then shifted conceptually to Singapore, but yet still to be brought together. All of those programs are in English, and so you don't have to worry about that aspect of it. The program in Latin America is underway right now at Francisco Marroquin University in Guatemala, even as we meet here. So you have that as an academic way to continue your experience with us, but we want you to continue that experience through the Alumni Association so that you can give in ways that help others to come here. Also, please, please, please do not forget when you get back to your universities to recommend to other students at those universities that they come for next summer or the summer after that, because there is great linkage in this organization between the students from year to year that know each other. And you can say that within your family as well, because we have many that have come that have been brothers and sisters and cousins and so forth within their families. So let me end the formal presentations here. And we shift to what is always, I think, a very emotionally compelling video of your summer. Thank you, each one of you.
From the Disney film. It goes on and on and on, but